Welcome to See You Live. In this episode, we question what tribalism is, interrogate its pros and cons as we evaluate its socio-economic and political impact in Kenya post-independence. We finally attempt to define what we need to do as a country to tame this animal and propose ways as to how best we can use our diversity as Kenyans to enhance our socio-economic development. Last weekend, a Kenyan member of parliament was frog-marched from Nyayo Stadium by goons, physically aggressed, and was only saved from further embarrassment and hurt by the Kenya police. The vocal politician was being accused by his aggressors for his constant attacks on Raila, the ODM party leader. This incident provoked public outcry as heavy exchanges ensued on social media and at various Bunge la Wananchi gatherings countrywide, with the politician's community, the Luhya, pulling out the tribal card and threatening to sever the otherwise cordial, historical, and cultural relationship that has existed between the Luhyas and Luos since time immemorial. But coming to think of it, tribalism thrives in our midst in various forms. You or someone close to you must have experienced tribal discrimination in one form or another in the recent past. Could be in church, at work, in a matatu, possibly at an entertainment spot, or probably even much closer to you in your marriage. During elections, a good proportion of urban voters vote primarily on tribal lines. In the history of Kenya, many political assassinations have been tribally motivated, and even recently, we have seen appointments to senior government positions being dished out on tribal basis. So what is this big animal in the room called tribalism? Tribalism in Kenya, a nation with over 40 ethnic groups, including the Kikuyu, Luo, Kalenjin, and Maasai, has been a defining factor in Kenya's social, political, and economic landscape. This podcast aims to provide a comprehensive understanding of the role of tribalism in Kenya's socio-political dynamics. Tribalism in Kenya is a relatively modern phenomenon, emerging from colonial policies of divided rule, urbanization, and post-independence political culture. Before British colonization, Kenyan tribes lived in distinct areas with minimal intertribal conflict, which were primarily over resources like water and pasture. However, colonial administration intensified ethnic divisions, setting the stage for post-independence tensions. Major opposing groups such as the Westerners, Luo, Luhya, Kalenjin, and Kisis, and the Gema, Kikuyu, Embu, Meru, had little historical contact, making tribalism a product of modern political and economic competition rather than ancient rivalries. We must appreciate that tribalism in Kenya is a deeply rooted phenomenon which stems from the diversity of its ethnic groups. While it has both positive and negative aspects, its impact on national unity and development is a frequent topic of debate. So let's break it all down for you. The pros of tribalism in Kenya: cultural identity and pride. Tribal affiliations provide a sense of belonging, preserving rich traditions, languages, and customs. For instance, the Maasai's vibrant attire and the Luhya's Isikuti dance are celebrated globally, boosting cultural tourism. Secondly, social support networks. In rural areas especially, tribes often act as informal welfare systems. People rely on their ethnic communities for support during hardships like funerals or medical emergencies, where communal and community contributions are common. Thirdly, for political mobilization. Tribalism can unify groups to advocate for their interests. Historically, it's been a tool for communities to demand representation or resources from the government, especially in marginalized regions like the northeastern province. Let's take a look at the disadvantages of tribalism in Kenya. Topping this list is division and conflict. Tribal loyalty often fuels ethnic tensions, most notably seen in the 2007-2008 post-election violence, where Kikuyu, Luo, and Kalenjin clashes left over 1,000 dead and displaced hundreds of thousands. It creates an us versus them mentality. Secondly, nepotism and corruption. Tribalism influences governance, with leaders favoring their own ethnic groups for jobs, contracts, or development projects. This undermines meritocracy and national progress. Think of the skewed allocation of resources in successive regimes. Second is nepotism and corruption. Tribalism influences governance, with leaders favoring their own ethnic groups for jobs, contracts, or development projects. This undermines meritocracy and national progress. Just think of the skewed allocation of resources in successive regimes. Lastly, the erosion of national identity. When allegiance to a tribe trumps Kenyan citizenship, it weakens the collective vision of a united nation, making it harder to address shared challenges like poverty or climate change. In Kenya, two major tribally motivated incidences have marked our post-independence history. The 1992 ethnic clashes, which started during the general election. Violence erupted in the Rift Valley between the Kalenjin and the Kikuyu communities, allegedly incited by politicians. And the 2007-2008 post-election violence, which followed a disputed presidential election and widespread tribal conflicts broke out. Both these tribal conflicts brought Kenya close to civil war, leading to over 1,000 deaths and several hundreds of thousands people displaced, in both cases drawing significant regional and international attention. These incidents are pivotal, dark moments where tribalism nearly brought Kenya down, highlighting the need for inclusive governance and social cohesion. While progress has been made, such as through devolution under the 2010 Constitution, the legacy of these conflicts underscores the ongoing challenge of balancing tribal identity with national unity. These two conflicts, while rooted in tribalism, also expose systemic issues like political manipulation and land disputes, which continue to shape Kenya's social fabric today. Further away from home, tribalism, the strong loyalty to one's own group, be it ethnic, cultural, or social, has shaped human history, continues to influence the world. The first example closer home is in Rwanda. The 1994 genocide, which was ignited by Hutu extremists and led to the death of over 800,000 people in 100 days. The violence destabilized the sub-region, resulting in a refugee crisis. To date, conflicts persist between Rwanda and its neighbor, the DRC. Secondly, in Yugoslavia, the Balkan Wars of the 90s, following the breakup of Yugoslavia, saw tribalism fuel violent conflict along ethnic lines between the Serbs, Croats, and the Bosnians. Over 100,000 people were killed and millions displaced. International institutions like the EU still work to stabilize the area, but tribal loyalties complicate integration. Lastly, in South Africa, where apartheid and post-apartheid tribalism have been experienced. Apartheid institutionalized tribalism by race, but ethnic divisions, say between the Zulu and the Xhosa, also played a role. Post-1994, political factions like the ANC and the IFP reflect these loyalties. The above examples show tribalism as a global occurrence and a double-edged sword, which is on one part a source of identity and resilience, but may also be a source of division and destruction. Its impact depends on how societies manage or fail to manage these primal loyalties. But how can we live together and better with tribalism? First and foremost, we need to promote inclusive education. Schools should emphasize national history, shared values over ethnic differences. Programs mixing students from diverse backgrounds like Kenya's national secondary schools, fora, can break stereotypes quite early. Second, encourage intertribal interactions. Events like cultural festivals, sports, or intermarriage, which is already rising in urban areas like Nairobi, can foster better understanding. The Umoja Cup football tournaments in volatile regions have shown promise in building peace. Thirdly, we need to strengthen institutions. Fair distribution of resources and transparent governance can reduce the perception that one tribe wins at the expense of others. Devolving power through the 2010 Constitution's county system was a step in the right direction, but implementation needs teeth. Fourthly, shift of political narratives. Leaders should campaign on ideas, not ethnic blocs. Media and civil society can amplify voices that reject tribal rhetoric. Think of how Gado's cartoons call out politicians for this. Lastly is economic equity. We need to address disparities in regions like Turkana or the coast, which are often neglected due to tribal politics, and this can lessen resentment. Jobs and infrastructure should reach beyond Central and Rift Valley strongholds, and probably certain affirmative action laws need to be enacted. Living together better hinges on balancing tribal pride with a stronger national identity. It's not about erasing differences. Kenya's diversity is our strength, but about ensuring they don't dictate who gets ahead or who gets left behind. So what do you personally think? Do you have any specific experiences or ideas you'd add from your perspective? This is CEO Live. It is my hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode. If you did, then kindly like, subscribe, and share this podcast widely. You will find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast. Thank you.